So next up we've got Peeping Tom from 1960. It's about an aspiring filmmaker who goes around filming women capturing their terror on tape as they get murdered. Now, I guess it should go without saying that pretty much any movie before the 70s, I usually have a pretty tough time with enjoying, usually for a multitude of reasons. A big part of it is that they all kind of had the same... I don't know if I could say they all have the same feel, but a lot of them... I don't know, it's just this way that movies from the 60s and before were presented. It's a tough thing to explain for me, but... And also, I feel like a lot of movies from before the 70s, it's tough to find, like, violent movies. Not that I'm someone who has to have violence in his movies, but it just feels like if there's no chance of having that, it severely limits what they can do to entertain me. You know, I heard people talk about this movie kind of being, like... I think I read somewhere that someone considered it to be like the first slasher movie, and I don't think I would go that far as to calling it a slasher movie. It certainly has some aspects that you can attribute to inspiring maybe a slasher movie, but I don't think I would go as far to call it one.
Yeah, so this is a movie that I've been wanting to see for literally like 10, maybe 15 years. And I've thought about this so often, and it often makes like if people make lists of proto slashers, this would often be on the list. I have to admit I didn't enjoy it anywhere near as much as I hoped I would. On a quick side note, I actually had no idea this movie was in color until I actually started watching it. I just assumed it was in black and white, like pretty much all my life, and seeing it's actually in color was sort of surprising. Unfortunately, because there's like almost nothing worth, it might as well have been in black and white because there's nothing really worth seeing. I guess they've thrown some nudity, but it's pretty tame. I guess the thing about this movie is when it came out, and you might have heard this, it got like it got decimated by critics. Like it was called one of like the most heinous movies of its time, and like it was heavily edited. I think it's like 80-minute versions, and that movie is about an hour and 40 minutes, so they cut out like 17 minutes of it. And watching the full version from a modern day perspective, I just don't get it. I wasn't expecting H.G. Lewis level of violence, but I was expecting something. And
Yeah.
This movie has like one on-screen kill. And it's not, I mean, there's a little blood, but it's in my opinion not overly impressive. I do like the whole psychoanalytical look into the main character. It's interesting, but also, I mean, this has to be one of the most socially awkward guys I've ever seen in my life. It's just hard to watch him try to have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, he's high strung, but he's just not creepy enough for me. That I think that's one of the main things. You know, he's constantly he feels nervous and maybe a little secretive, but I mean, obviously he's not the most level-headed guy out there, but he just doesn't feel like he has that creepiness factor that you find in some other movies of similar nature. So
yeah, there's a scene in which he's talking to the mother of, I guess, his main love interest. So he's talking to the blind mother, and just a really it's like a 8-minute awkward conversation where the mother's just trying to, I guess, not really get to know him, but just, I guess, feel him out. It's just strange. I was sort of expecting the mother to give some like information, like, oh hey, I knew your father type thing, but it was just a conversation that didn't really go anywhere, didn't do anything, and the movie had some interesting ideas. I liked the I guess origin portion where he's just talking about what his father was doing to him. I mean, it was interesting, and I personally think the main actor, he was a German guy, I think he did a pretty good job. It's just that it's not much. I feel like it's not much going on in this movie. I mean, it's pretty disappointing in my opinion.
Mm. Sometimes in like movies from the 60s and before, and it happened once or twice in this movie where it feels like they're having sex with the tone of their voice. Like like the woman will start to, her voice will start to get higher as she gets more excited. Then the guy has to start matching that, and then she gets higher and he gets higher. Eventually they get to the point where they're both about to have an orgasm, but with their words. I don't know. Like I said, it's tough for me to explain these things, but I don't know. It's just something about the way movies from the 60s and 50s and all that. It doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, and I just want to, I guess, go on record saying that I've seen quite a lot of horror movies from the pre-60s. I think, obviously, Chucky can confirm, but I've watched so many 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s horror movies, so I don't generally have a problem with them. I mean, sometimes you'll find slow ones, like I find this one. It is worth mentioning that this movie did feel a bit to me like it's a movie from, I think it's 1962, called The Couch. It has a sort of a similar theme following this sort of crazy guy as he's going about his life trying to restrain himself from hurting those he loves. And this is another movie from 1964 called The Strangler, which is much the same way. And both of those movies, I feel like, dealt with this issue in a lot more interesting manner. Not that Peeping Tom doesn't have some things going forward, but I personally can't imagine me wanting to see this again anytime soon, which, for being a classic movie it's just disappointing.
One thing that I will say, I mean, I felt like the movie started off okay, and then just as it went by, it just got a little less interesting, and it just didn't go the places that I thought it might go or could have gone, and it eventually just, dwindled down as it went along. But for that opening scene where she was a prostitute, she said it was £2, which, it's kind of amusing when you look back at some of these older movies, because now you watch it in this modern day and age, and you think about what you can get for £2 now. That's like what a really cheap DVD in the DVD bin at Walmart or something. It's £2 for a bang. That's a good deal.
Inflation really hits out.
But at least murder that ass before you murder her.
I don't know if he was so much interested in that type of thing.
Well, see, that's the problem. He should have been, and maybe that would have bumped up the rating for this one.
I mean, one thing that interested me about this one, probably more than anything else, was one, I forget what they called it, but it's like this, I don't know, like little shop, but they were sounding like nude pictures to people, like on the down low. That was probably one of my favorite scenes, actually, with the old guy sort of flipping through the pictures. Oh, I'll take this one and this. No, I'll actually take the whole thing. Talk about a difference from nowadays. We can pretty much find anything you want online. To back then, actually having to go in shady places buying shady pictures. I grew up in a whole nother generation, which I am quite happy for. And also the whole thing, like having movies like that with film reels, like just the whole technological differences, that looks so annoying to deal with. So yeah, if anything is interesting about this movie, it's just how far we've come.
Yep, so Peeping Tom. Like I said before, I just have a problem with movies that are pretty much pre-70s, so I didn't go in expecting to love this, but I thought maybe there was something in it that... something that would grab my attention, but unfortunately it just never got there. People sometimes mention this as one of the original slasher movies, and it just because it doesn't really have much or any violence in the movie, it's just I can't approve of that label for it. So even though it started off a little okay and dwindled down, I'd say it started off as a 6 for me, but then it dwindled down to a 4. So I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. It's not a movie I'll watch again.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I did have a great time with this one. And like I said, this is one I've wanted to see for quite a long time. You know, it is one of the classics of the genre that I just hadn't seen yet. And I just found it more than anything just disappointing. I liked some of the ideas, but as an overall movie, I didn't love it. So I'm going to give this a below average rating of a 6 out of 10.
Well, at least you can get £2 for a prostitute. That's the one thing I took out of the movie that will remain in my mind for at least the short term.
At least you get something.